on Corporal Tabor Rubin. He is a Medal of Honor recipient. This brief is unclassified. So a little bit about Corporal Rubin. He was born June 18th, 1929 in a small town in Hungary. He was born of Jewish descent. Both of his parents were Jewish. He had an older brother and a younger sister. So being of Jewish descent in Europe at that time frame, it was hard because of World War II and what the Germans were doing to Jewish people at that time. So a little bit about his early life. During his time in Hungary, the German troops started forcing their way in, and his parents decided to try to send him and his younger sister to Sweden, which was neutral at the time. There was no German forces in there, so they tried to send them there. On their way there, him and his younger sister were captured by German forces. They were both sent to different concentration camps. His sister being sent to Auschwitz, and himself being sent to a camp in Austria. So he served his time in the concentration camp, 14 months in the concentration camp, and then he was freed by U.S. forces. When he got out of the concentration camp, he found out that his father, mother, and younger sister were killed in the gas chamber at Auschwitz. So you can imagine how hard that was for him. Once he was freed, though, he felt that he owed the U.S. A great deal of thanks. So that's when he tried to start his immigration process to the United States. He finally got to the United States in 1949. He arrived in New York City Harbor. When he arrived, as soon as he got here, he was straight to work. So he first started working as a shoemaker, and he worked as a shoemaker for a little while, and then he started internshipping at a Hungarian butcher shop. And while he was internshipping there, he like I said, he felt like he had a great deal of thanks that he owed to the United States. And that's part of the reason that he came to the U.S., not only to get away from the prejudice, I guess you could say, that was in that area where he was, but he also wanted to come to the U.S. and serve in the U.S. Army. And that's when it was still 1949, he went to take his first exam to try to enlist in the Army. And when he did, he failed the first time. He failed his English exam. So his accent was still very thick at the time. Nobody could really understand him. So after failing that, he took some time, and he really worked on his English and getting better with English. And 1950, he went to take the exam again and passed with a little help from some fellow test takers. When he finally passed, that's when he enlisted, and that was around February 1950. That's when it really started his service in the Army. So from February of 1950 is when he joined. Soon after he joined, he found himself in Korea. He had the option to whether he was going to go to Korea or stay back because he was not a U.S. citizen yet. So being that he wasn't a U.S. citizen, he did not have to, he was not obligated at the time to go over to Korea and serve. But him being the humble person that he is, he said, I want to be over there with my brothers in arms and be fighting side by side. So, while he was in Korea, he had multiple heroic acts. One, his unit was overran. I mean, they were just, North Korean forces were pushing and pushing and pushing, and they couldn't handle it anymore. So they started to push back to the Pusan perimeter, which is the lower portion of South Korea, and it's a port. So when they started to push back, his first sergeant was very anti-Semitic, so he did not like Jewish people. So his first sergeant would always send him on these pretty much near suicide missions. So one of these near suicide missions was when the rest of his unit was trying to retreat back to the Pusan perimeter. They left Corporal Reuben a little bit further up, at the bottom of a hill. So you never want to fight uphill, obviously. And that's exactly what he was doing. So as the North Korean troops started coming over the top of the hill, Corporal Reuben used his intelligence to set up multiple fighting positions. At this time, everybody was kind of retreating back. Corporal Reuben was, he was giving it to North Korea. He not only allowed his unit to push back to the Pusan perimeter, but he survived against a whole, almost a brigade of North Korean troops. So, I mean, that's a very heroic act right there. That alone, he should have been put in for the Medal of Honor. But, being that his first sergeant was very anti-Semitic, it never got pushed up. So, shortly thereafter, when he started to realize that, hey, nobody's coming back for me, he started pushing back himself to the Pusan perimeter, and as soon as he started pushing back, he got injured. He finally got back to the Pusan perimeter and linked up with everybody else, and he then was put in for a Purple Heart, and he received during the war he received 2 Purple Hearts. This time was one of the times that he received a Purple Heart. Because, he continued to fight and show his resiliency while he was injured. That's just one very heroic act. Another time, they were, once they got back to the Pusan perimeter, they resupplied, they got more manpower. They really started to push up into North Korea. So they had a lot of people then and a lot of ammunition. So they started pushing up, and around this time, they pushed so far into North Korea that the Chinese were kind of getting a little nervous. So the Chinese created a force called the Chinese Republic of Willing Soldiers, I think that was what it was called. And they started to fight alongside North Korea. And when that happened, North Korea, they received a lot of manpower from China. And they started to push back on the U.S. and, the U.S. allies, South Korea, all the allies. And yet again, his first sergeant sent him on one of these missions where the rest of the unit pushed back and Corporal Reuben was left to, allow them to push back. And man, let me tell you, he did a great job. During that fight, he manned a machine gun that 2 previous gunners have been shot at, and they were dead. So he manned that gun, and he manned that gun until that machine gun was out of ammunition, and then he started to use his carbine, grenades, and anything he had, and he set up multiple fighting positions then as well. And that's when he was injured yet again, and he was then captured by the Chinese and became a prisoner of war, with about, I want to say, 40 to 50 other soldiers. And during his time in prisoner of war camp, he would go out and collect food and medical supplies that were needed for the other people in there that were trying to give up, and they just didn't want to be alive anymore. And he would go out and collect food, willingly knowing that if he was caught, he could be executed. He still did it, and he would portion out the food, portion out the medical supplies, and then they were after the U.S. and South Korea won, they were released, and it wasn't until 2005 that he received the Medal of Honor. While in the prisoner of war camp, he single-handedly saved, over 40 men, which that's very awesome. I mean, that's just heroic right there. And it took 55 years later for him to get the Medal of Honor, and that's when George W. Bush gave him the Medal of Honor at the White House. 10 years later, he died in 2015, and he was remembered forever after President Barack Obama renamed a VA clinic after him in California. So, some of the core leader attributes and competencies. Character: Corporal Reuben showed courage, not only by continuing to fight after being injured, but just everything he did. I mean, he was very courageous and wanting to be there with his brothers in arms and just serving with them. Presence: Corporal Reuben showed resiliency when injured. He was just, when he was injured, he continued to fight, and he finally pushed back to reconnect with the rest of the brigade. Intellect: Corporal Reuben showed very, very good intelligence by having multiple fighting positions on these near suicide missions that his first sergeant would send him on. Leadership: he showed his leadership ability by using his intelligence when sent on these suicide missions. I don't know about you, but if there is a leader or a person that shows that much intelligence when outnumbered by that much, I would love to serve with him. Development: he dedicated his life he willingly dedicated his life so others could retreat injury-free. So that's just heroic itself. Achievements: he showed his ability to accomplish the mission no matter what. After being injured and everything, that's awesome. Okay. So, any questions? No questions? I got a few questions for you guys. When was Corporal Reuben born? Okay. What year did Corporal Reuben receive his Medal of Honor? Okay, awesome. That concludes my brief for today.